Okay, how's everybody doing? All right, so this is the first episode of a short series, Boomer Painting 101. And what I want to do is just share some color theory with you first. Talk just a little bit about the building flat and the fence there, excuse me. And the paint that I use. Some of you already know this, maybe perhaps, but many of you have just subbed recently. And, you'd have to wade through all the backlog of episodes to find certain things. And I want to maybe just re-summarize the paint I use and why I use it. So as most of you know, I almost exclusively use Tamiya acrylic paint. And I use isopropyl alcohol to thin it, 99%. Now, why do I do that? Well, number one, I'm not going to buy like a bottle this size of Tamiya thinner, which is really just isopropyl anyway, for 10 bucks. When I can buy 30 times the amount. Well, what's the actual, this is 10 millimeters, this is 500, actually 30, that's like, what's the ratio of that? 10 millimeters versus 500 for $5 on the left, $10 for a Tamiya thinner. I figured that out long ago, right? Long ago. That's why I use it for everything and cleaning my airbrush, and I can blow it through all day long and afford to do it, right? I'll soak down a whole, here's an example. So I'll take earth, which I have bottles and bottles of this. Like every time I go to the hobby shop, I pick up one of these. And I'll soak down a super thin earth wash and spray down my track work and scenery. Like all this work along here, along the road and along here. It's not all airbrushed. I'll pour flood the area, like just pour isopropyl on here. And then just take an eyedropper just right out of the bottle and dump and move it around. Tons and tons of isopropyl alcohol. I mean, it just evaporates and then it leaves the rich pigment behind in varied ways that you could never reproduce with a brush. So I use earth for that method. I use buff. I use red, brown, hull red. These two colors I use a lot for model railroad subjects like cars and locomotives, trucks, and underframes of cars. Like black and white are not colors, right? White's for toning down, black's for toning up. So I'll use black and brown to make rail brown. 50-50, 60-40, 30-70, whatever you like. And then I used this rail brown to paint this fence with. That's just the mix of this with a little bit of this left over in the cup I wasted and blew onto the fence, which already looks pretty good as a background subject. And then this is just straight out of the bottle. This one has a base coat on the building flat as XF90. Really thin though, right? Just build up thin. You don't want to opaque your subjects out with the paint. Like, don't lay it on too heavy. The trick is very, very thin, super thin even, with lots and lots of layers built up slowly. Going dark, or for light to dark, or dark to light. In this case, from white to dark, and then from this dark down to the light coats of what's going to be yellow with lots of white. Probably 50-50 I'll start with, and even more and more. And then maybe add some buff around a little bit too. Thin, 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 right? The same way I paint the terrain is the same way I paint the buildings. Like this color right here, this mauve, you can mix it from different ways. You can use a little bit of, tiny bit of red or red brown in there, and then white, tone it down with white. And I'm going to show a little demo on part 2 on how I do that. Like how I mix paint on the fly and just start throwing layers on and so that you get this kind of look, right? Because that's what we want, right? We want just the look, like an artistic sort of scale fade look. Because the problem with models is they never convey the true real world physics of light and shadow in a model, Like if the model's really small scale, you want it to be lighter, right? Like lighter, lighter, lighter. The larger they are, you can get away with darker. So with the model, in my experiences, is you want to create as much light and shadow before the light actually does it for you. And then when you put the light on it, then that's where that dimension, that's where that look comes from, right? And we forget that, you know? Like we just paint things with a color in our mind, but you know, so that's why a lot of like armor modelers, and I know there's a few armor modelers that are subscribed to my channel, and they know this. They'll paint a model, like not always, but often paint a tank like flat black. Or, you know, I don't know if they know this or do this, but I add green to black because I never want black. I just want to change the black, right? I mean, why buy NATO black when you can just add olive green to black and have your own, and you can mix your own. Anyway, so you paint it black and then they start building up the, you know, color. Like instead of gray, they'll just use white. And as you're adding layers and layers of white, you're getting the gray. You see, it's a kind of a practical experience, and you learn as you go, right? You don't need to document it. You just do it on the fly and just learn and try to remember. And even if you don't remember, who cares? I mean, my wife, like, she's an unbelievable cook. She, like, doesn't even use a recipe. And then I'll say, wow, this is really good. Can you do it again? Well, I don't know. I don't remember. You know, it's just, you know, just the creativity, even with food or anything. It's just people on the fly, right? Some of the great master painters, they never wrote down stuff, really. They just got so used to it. They just were in the moment, right? And that's what I want to encourage. Get in the moment with your paint palette. Get alone and experiment. But remember, thin it down. Use thin coats. You can never go wrong. If you go too heavy, it's hard to reverse, right? So the track, you know, like the track would have been just basic, you know, spray bombed, I think, brown. And then you're going to see all kinds of colors there. You're going to see those three main colors that I just shared with you, right? You're going to see the earth. You're going to see this hull red and or red brown, or both or all of it. And then there's wooden deck tan. And then even, oh yeah, buff. Every model railroader should have these colors. At least for your ground and track work. Right? Like you're missing out. And like, oh, well, these bottles are expensive. Oh, what are they here? I don't know, $4 here in Canada or whatever, maybe less down in the States. But if you add the cheap isopropyl alcohol to the equation, it's the cheapest paint there is with the best pigment in the world, in my opinion. And you can use a brush with it and washes if you're careful, because the isopropyl likes to attack the same base paint with a brush when you stipple it. But if you airbrush layers and layers over top, it won't move the paint below. So, you know, that's part of the reason why when you look at this diorama and you say, you know, you give me compliments, which I really appreciate, I have to give a lot of the credit to Tamiya and the airbrush. Because, you know, like without them, then where am I, right? Okay, so then I'll just insert an episode, or not an episode, a section on this particular fence that was painted rail brown. I took the top off, remember? And that's being repurposed over by the Dairy Queen. I'll show you that. Okay, so this little offcut from the fence, I'm going to use it right here. I just thought it would help tie things in nicer and add a little more age factor to the Dairy Queen. The idea behind the Dairy Queen is that it's abandoned. I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to put some glazing in the windows, but I'm going to have them, you know, sort of cracked and broken, and some of the windows maybe boarded up. You know, it's sort of indicative of our times, really, isn't it? But I really like the mood of an abandoned scene and what it does for a model railroad, you know, or a signature scene or whatever. And then I'm going to weather the ground as well. Like there's a lot of other, some final passes of fine detail that need to go there. And around this building as well. Okay. Okay then, and so this building flat, I'm going to go with a very, very pale yellow. If I didn't mention that. after shooting this episode 14 takes here. Okay, so it's going to be a very pale wash down. I'm going to demo that, how I do that, and how I do the planks, how I pick out the planks, the same way I do ties. This procedure will apply the same way I do my track, right? Same thing. So that's what I'm looking forward to showing you on part 2. Okay, so thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day.